Chet appeared about 10 minutes later. My, he laughed. You've got an enviable amount of energy today, don't you? No, I said, brushing back some hair with the back of my hand. I'm just mad. He produced his own brush and an empty coffee can. Oh, who at? Myself. Oh, that's a tough one. Did you do poorly on a test? No, I I turned to him and said, how did you fall in love with your wife? He pulled some Navajo white into his can and smiled. Ah, he said, boy problems. I do not have boy problems. He hesitated but didn't argue. Instead, he said, I fell in love with her by mistake. By mistake? What do you mean? I didn't intend to. At the time, I was engaged to somebody else, and in no position to fall in love. Fortunately, for me, I saw how blind I'd been before it was too late. Blind? Yes. My fiance was very beautiful. He had the most magnificent brown eyes, and skin like an angel. And for a time, all I could see was her beauty. But then, well, let's just say, I discovered he wasn't a fraction of the person Rene was. He dipped his brush in the coffee can and struck a picket with paint. It's easy to look back and see it, and it's easy to give the advice. But the sad fact is, most people don't look beneath the surface until it's too late. We were quiet a minute, but I could see Chet thinking, and from the furrow in his brow, I knew it had nothing to do with my problems. I'm sorry, I brought up your wife. I brought up your wife, I said. Oh, don't be, that's all right. He shook his head and tried on a smile. Besides, I wasn't thinking of Rene. I was thinking of someone else. Someone who's never been able to look beneath the surface. At this point, I don't suppose I even wanted to. Who was he talking about? I wanted to know, but I felt it would be crossing some line to ask, so we painted a picket in silence. At last, he turned to me and said, get beyond his eyes and his smile and the sheen of his hair. Look at what's really there. The way he said it sent a chill through me. It was as though he knew. And suddenly I felt defensive. Was he telling me his grandson wasn't worth it? When it was time to go in for dinner, I still didn't feel right. But at least the tornado was gone. Mom said Dad was working late, and since the boys were off with their friends, it was just the two of us. She told me that she and Dad had talked about it, and that they both felt a little strange having Chet come over like he was. Maybe, she said, they should find a way to pay him for his help. I told her I thought Chet would find it insulting. But the next day she went ahead and inserted him anyway. Chet said, no, Mrs. Baker, it's been my pleasure to help out your daughter on this project, and wouldn't hear another word about it. The week ended with my dad loading the back of his truck with all the clippings and scraps before he set off for work on Saturday morning. Then Chet and I spent the rest of the day hoeing up weeds and raking and reading the dirt for seeding. It was on the it was on this last day that Chet asked, your family is not moving, are you? Moving? Why do you say that? Oh, my daughter brought up this possibility at the dinner table last night. She thought that maybe you're fixing up the house because you're getting ready to sell it. Even though Chad and I had talked about a lot of things while we were walking. I probably wouldn't have told him about Mr. Finnegan or working or Uncle David or why the yard was such a mess if he hadn't asked me about moving. But since he had, well, I wound up telling him everything, and it felt good to talk about it, especially about Uncle David. It felt like blowing a dandelion into the wind and watching all the little seeds float off, up and away. I was proud of my parents, and looking around the front yard, I was proud of me too. Just wait until I got my hands on the backyard. Then maybe I'd even paint the house. I could do it, I could. Chet was pretty quiet after I told him the story, and when Mom brought us out sandwiches at lunchtime, we sat on the porch and ate without saying a word. Then he broke the silence by nodding across the street and saying, I don't know why he doesn't just come out and say hello. Who? I asked, then looked across the street to where he nodded. The curtain in Bryce's room moved quickly back into place, and I couldn't help asking, Bryce? That's the third time I've seen him watching. Really? My heart was fluttering about like a baby bird trying to fly. He frowned and said, Let's finish up and get the seed sown, shall we? You'll want the warmth of the day to help with the germination. I was happy to finally be planting the yard, but I couldn't help being distracted by Bryce's window. Was he watching? During the rest of the afternoon, I checked more often than I'd like to admit, and I'm afraid Chad noticed too, because when we were all done and we'd congratulated each other on what was sure to be a fine looking yard, he said, he may be acting like a coward now, but I do hold out hope for the boy. A coward? What on earth could I say to that? I just stood there with the hose in one hand and the spigot fell beneath the other. And with that, Chad waved so long and walked across the street. A few minutes later, I saw Bryce coming down the sidewalk toward his house. I did a double take. All this time, I thought he was inside the house watching, and he was really outside walking around. I was embarrassed all over again. I turned my back on him and concentrated on watering the yard. What a fool I was! What a complete idiot! What a complete idiot! And I had just built up a nice head of angry steam when I heard, It's looking good, Julie. Nice job. It was Bryce, standing right there on our driveway. And suddenly I wasn't mad at me anymore. I was mad at him. How could he stand there like my supervisor and tell me, Nice job? He had no business saying anything after what he'd done. I was about to hose him down when he said, I'm sorry for what I did, Julie. It was, wrong. I looked at him, into those brilliant blue eyes, and I tried to do what Chet had said. I tried to look past them. What was behind them? What was he thinking? Was he really sorry? Or was he just feeling bad about the things he said? It was like looking into the sun though, and I had to turn away. I couldn't tell you what we talked about after that, except that he was nice to me and he made me laugh. And after he left, I shut off the water and went inside feeling very, very strange. The rest of the evening, I bounced back and forth between upset and uneasy. The worst part being, I couldn't really put my finger on what exactly I was upset or uneasy about. Of course, it was Bryce, but why wasn't I just mad? He'd been such a scoundrel. Or happy? Why wasn't I just happy? He'd come over to our house. He'd stood on our driveway. He'd said nice things. We'd laughed, but I wasn't mad or happy. And as I lay in bed trying to read, I realized that upset had been overshadowed by uneasy. I felt as though someone was watching me. I got so spooked. I even got up and checked out the window and in the closet and under the bed. But still the feeling didn't go away. It took me until nearly midnight to understand what it was. It was me, watching me.